Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Meet the Coach together with co-host Steve Jeffs and myself, Erin DeGraaf. And today we talk to Ilyse Greenberg. Hello, Ilyse. How you doing?
Hi guys, how are you? Good.
Good.
I'm good.
Thank you for being here today. So, what we could try to present and introduce you, but you're the person who knows yourself much better. So, who is Ilyse? How did she come into coaching? What does she does as coach?
Oh boy, you don't want me to go into all that right now. So I'll just start by saying, I call myself a strengths-based leadership coach, and I coach individuals and teams, and I help them identify, appreciate, and also capitalize on their unique combination of talents so that they can reach whatever goals it is that they set. When I say strengths based, I have I guess, a specific meaning for it because to me, strengths based means it's who people are at their best. And I like starting with strengths. It's really important to me that people get that view of who they are, and they don't often recognize that. It's like their talents and their natural talents are like breathing to them. So they don't really understand that each of their talents can be different, but then also that combination of talents is truly unique to them. And so when I can help them identify that, it just starts a relationship in a really great place. I think it also gives me a little bit of an ability to be authentic. I'm a positive person usually. And it allows me to just start the relationship from a really authentic place for myself, and it puts me at ease, which is really nice. And so I do use the Clifton Strengths assessment in order to do that. I'm a certified Clifton Strengths coach, and I really appreciate it for helping people like play back to them in language that makes sense to them. It's really user friendly in that way. It gives them like an immediate jolt of confidence when they read their report. And so that also, as you know, as coaches, kind of puts them in just a different headspace. And so more receptive, more open to different thinking. And it's really it's awesome to see. And then kind of on a tactical side, it gives us a common language with which to use from the very beginning. And so having that, I kind of like, you can hear I'm like stacking the deck a little bit to make it easier for me to engage and have kind of like an authentic relationship. So it's kind of a little bit of who I am, at least as a coach. I can, at some point, I can get into how I got here, but
Yeah.
I'll pause.
So when did you start it as a coach?
So I started about 5 years ago. It was right before COVID hit. Actually, it was Clifton Strengths that got me into it. I had been I had 30 plus years in business, different company type jobs. I was started in accounting and found my way to marketing for 20 plus years. And I left my last marketing job because I really appreciated the relationships I had and with the people as a manager, as a leader, and cultivating talent. And I was like, okay, I got to do something like that. And I thought I was going to go into recruiting because that felt kind of the most connected to my previous life. Um, and I chose to take the Clifton Strengths 1 week coaching course on my own. And I was like, blown away by I love the strengths it speaks to me and by just the idea of coaching, which embarrassingly I didn't really know much about before I took that class. And I did even understand then that it was kind of a coaching light course. I think I had a really good instructor for that as to what it was and what it wasn't. And then immediately I signed up for the coaching program that I took CTI, and there was no turning back. I've been It's been amazing ever since. I think I part of it is that I wish I had this 30 years ago. I wish I had someone 30 years ago to help me get my saboteurs out of the way, my those voices, everything that kind of is going on when you're in your 20s and 30s. And so I love working with people to help them either in a career transition or with a, if they've gotten a new role or even just working as a leader more effectively. It's just like, I can't believe I haven't been doing this for 30 years. That's how it feels.
That's brilliant. What does strengths bring to your CTI coaching, and what does your CTI coaching bring to strengths?
Yeah, it's such a great, I think about that a lot, as you could imagine. And at its core, the strengths is really just a tool. I mean, the actual assessment itself, and from an insider coaching perspective, I think of the top strengths as like the kind of the allies that we have, right? And so it allows me to call on those allies really quickly and really easily, because people, we've read the same report, we understand, we talk about it, we have history, we get examples from their lives about what those are. So an ally is immediately accessible. And so I don't really find myself using it as much throughout the coaching engagement other than to call upon the allies. Um, and it's also interesting because one of the premises of strengths is that we don't actually get held back by our weaknesses. It's more by the overuse of our strengths. And so I find that to be true with me. I find it to be true with the clients that I have, with relationships that I have, is that we're really good at something and we almost don't even know when we're using too much of it, right? If we're really good at organizing, then we may become a control freak to other people, right? Like we don't see those. They're like the blind spots to us. And so what I think is also helpful is that they also can be saboteurs. So it's that same combination of taking something positive, something that you are really good at, and making sure that it's not overused, and then also bringing in the CTI idea of saboteurs to say, what's the origin of that? Why do what is it that has either in your past or whatever that might be that is causing you to overuse that, makes you feel like you have to. So there's a fine line in some ways between um, somebody's real strength and the saboteur. And I just intellectually, I love that. And then I also love the idea that people's light bulbs go off when they hear that kind of connection, so that it's not from left. Neither of those things are from left field. It all feels about them.
It's one of my favorite moments working with new clients. So I do a lot of work with strengths as well.
Mhm.
And to start with the positive, it's like I love seeing people's resistance to starting with what works.
Yes.
They're like, no, 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 none of that's important. Let's go to what's not. We go, well, we'll get there. We'll get there. Or they look at their strengths report and they go straight to the bottom of the
To the
list.
bottom. Everybody goes to the bottom. That's terrible. It's 34.
Oh,
I did that. I did that the first time. I did. And
it's
I was
not
in a
true.
role. Yeah. Well, I was in a role that I was like, okay, that should not be 34, but it was also, right. It's not true. It's just, it doesn't matter. And the other thing, as you know about strengths, is that it's not, it's not prescriptive into what we should do. It's just how we do it. And so we can be and kind of do whatever our passions are and whatever we want. It's how we go about it. And you can go about things by sitting with someone and learning about a new thing. If relationship is kind of a big deal for you, or you can read a book and analyze it and look at the data and go back to history and how was it done before, if that's how you learn best. So it's, of course, there are some areas that is kind of interesting when they're not a lot of relationship maybe, but in kind of a people sort of role. And you just start to question how they got there and what is it they love, but it becomes that curiosity rather than a judgment or even that it's wrong. It's just really interesting.
Yeah, I love
When
it.
I look at strengths, certainly for a person, it's for yourself, it's interesting, but it's more looking at certainly if you are a team or you're building a team, you're
Yeah.
gonna look at those parts that, well, these are at the number 34. Well, maybe I should find someone who has mind 34 more on the top, because then you get more to a balanced team?
Yeah. Well, that is interesting for sure. I love the idea, and it's so corny, but like they say it, in the strengths class, which is like each person is a star, right? Like they're a star, but they have like their five strengths, but then a team should kind of be well-rounded, like a circle. So so you kind of bring all that together. And what I love so many things about that, but one is just the appreciation of it, right? You immediately have to appreciate the differences among you, because we are saying that we are good at not everything, but we're really good at some things. And that's such a different mindset than corporate America, and kind of in performance evaluations and all those things, and giving people permission to really focus in on what they like is really important. Now, it's interesting because like when people are designing a team, naturally you think about like who's good at what, and you want to look at the reports and everything. And as managers, we also kind of talk to managers about how do they engage with their employees to bring out the best in them, so that it's actually a two-way street of, is that a team you think you want to be on or not, right? Like we don't ever really want people to decide for us necessarily. We want to have, but managers get really good then at engaging in that process of creating that team that is the circle, because they also have buy-in from their team because they appreciate the differences. And it's so important when a manager appreciates and really values what
Mhm.
their team is bringing.
Mhm.
So it's a really cool process to see. I love working with emerging leaders. I do a lot with that, and kind of that middle zone where it's that leader as coach idea, right? It's so foreign to them to like ask the people that work for them a question. And so it's a real great kind of experience to do that.
And then, of course, to listen to the answer that comes back. Often
That's
that's a
even harder.
harder.
Right. Is that if they know they should ask, it becomes even harder to listen. They have to like really believe that it's important to ask and listen.
Yeah.
And strengths does that, right? It does it for, because it does it for yourself. And that's what I think is so helpful is I was just asked a question by a client, is like, what's the benefit of strengths for this proposal or this group that you're doing it for? Like, how does that help them do their job better? And I'm thinking like, well, the minute that they do their own strengths, right? First they appreciate themselves, and then they start to appreciate others, and they can just have, it's just a deeper conversation. It's a deeper engagement with whomever I'm training them to work with. And so it felt kind of funny, but I can't wait to answer the question for them.
It is. It's one of those questions that when you can see the answer, you're like, how is that even a question?
Yeah, yeah,
But until you can see the answer, it's almost the only question. And
that's right. That's exactly right.
it's one of those things that when we sort of sit back and we actually give people a chance to think about it, it's like, well, would you prefer to work in an environment where people are looking for what's not working, finding ways that you're wrong, and trying to make you smaller, or in an environment where people are willing and able to see your brilliance, see what's working, help you use your strengths more effectively to align with where the team's going and create even more amazing
Right.
results and appreciate the contribution that you bring.
Yeah.
Uh,
Like, yeah, not even close, right? I mean, let's push water downhill or try to get it go uphill. Like, it really doesn't make sense. Although it's amazing at how many people were so conditioned. They grew up that way in home, in business. That's just the corporate culture of performance evaluations. And they believe, well, this area is holding you back. This area is an area in which you need to work on. And the hardest part is, we have to pay attention to that. We also maybe do some critical thinking and saying, is it holding me back? Maybe it's holding me back here, but then is that an area that I want to excel in? Is this a place that fits for me? I believe so strongly in fit. I mean, it just has to be a good fit, or else we're never appreciated for that combination of talents. And that's really hard because people make decisions based on so many different factors of where they think they belong. And breaking them out of that mold is hard.
especially with the inherent fear that we have, Maslow's hierarchy, belonging and fear of not belonging. Let me belong somewhere I don't fit is often feels more comfortable than let me find where I fit and belong.
100%, 100%. I just heard a quote on a podcast. I'll get it probably wrong, but it was something like, the more comfortable I feel with myself, then the more comfortable I am in making choices that might be unconventional. And so I think that that's kind of the crux of what we're trying to do, is get people to feel more confident, more comfortable in their own skin with what they do bring to the world, their natural talents, their purpose, whatever, all these different things. And then so that they then know they have choice and that they can choose something that might, not be what others near them would choose. But it's just a really, yeah, having worked for 30 years in different companies, big, small, all different kinds, it's everywhere, right? What people, the pressure of succeeding in a narrow kind of path is so strong. I felt it for a really long time.
So listening to you both, because you're really experts in strength, I believe that when people do interviews and just only looking at a CV, they should actually do a very quick strength test quickly to say, what are your strengths? And knowing the strengths of my team and myself to see, you great candidate CV, but on strengths basis, I have a difficulty to be able to fit you in.
Well, that is also like, it is interesting because I feel so strongly at how terrible CVs are, or kind of only experience is as a predictor to success for people in a role, right? Like, to me, it is all about fit. And I can't, and it's so pervasive, and it's really hard for people now with ATS systems, right? So they have these systems that just scrape your resume, and if you don't match 80% of the keywords, like they don't even call you back. They don't even look at you. So it's really hard. I think the issue with strengths becomes, like, again, in the wrong hands, it can be kind of not great because people interpret what that strength means to them. I think it does come up in a really important way with fit. And so if someone does happen to know, they kind of make it so that it shouldn't be a tool for hiring, it should be a tool for discussion, right? But going into an interview and understanding what's required to be successful there, even if an employer does know that, if they have their strengths, like, both of them should understand what of that culture, what of the role, what of the things would be something that they could want to learn or interested in learning, maybe they don't already have experience in. But there's fundamental things that might not be a good fit. If you're highly relationship oriented and everybody sits and does their own work and are highly competitive, that's not a good place for you to be. And I'd want a manager telling me that, a hiring manager, as much as I would tell them too. So I just encourage people to be themselves. I encourage them to talk about their strengths, to ask questions based on their strengths. And it's not as fun when the hiring manager decides, but it's really important that the hiring manager decides because they know their environment better than you do. And getting a job that you're not a good fit for, like, you still have to go to that job. So just because you got it that's not the hard part. The hard part is actually working there. And so I really try to persuade, even though in coaching we don't really try to persuade, but I try to persuade people to be themselves in interviews, and it becomes self-selected as well as selected for them, and they have to understand the benefits of that. So
I've seen some
yeah.
I've seen some really great examples where people certainly coming into an interview have the self-awareness that working with strengths and similar assessments brings, where you can show up and say, someone says, hey, how would you approach this? Well, I have these strengths. I tend to overuse these. And here's the strategy of how I manage my triggers and my overuse. And this is what I've learned to be able to move forwards. Here's some examples of that. And so having that, and actually I know someone recently that got promoted, and there were some significant red flags that came out of their personality profile and how it fit with their role. And until they got into an interview and people could ask about it,
Yeah.
they had strategies, they had understanding, they recognized what was going on. They knew they knew how to lead themselves with the resources that they have. And that to me is one of the key things, not just of strengths, but actually of coaching. How do
Yeah,
we help people grow their awareness and take more responsibility so that they can choose to step in and create the results that are important to create for
that's right.
tasks as well as for relationships?
Yeah, that's so interesting. Like also just the idea of saying I can choose to address these things because I really like aspects of being here. I want that promotion and that's the right choice for them. Or they can choose to say, that's not where I want to spend my energy. I want to spend my energy doing it somewhere else. And and you know, as long as we say it's out of, you know, the positive, not the negative, it's kind of a force. I always think about it kind of as moving towards something rather than moving away from something. So I want people to be moving towards this in what they want, not like leaving because they're moving away from it because they're fearful of it. I want them to be moving towards something else. And so it really helps them frame that idea of they get to choose that, and they have the ability, the self-awareness, the self-management, any other tools to actually make that, you know, a reality for them in that role and be successful. So I love that.
Absolutely. Hey, this is a really engaging and compelling conversation. And when we look at strengths in isolation, it's really fantastic. And yet, everything that we're speaking to is completely different than most organizational cultures. So when you're working with leaders inside organizations, you're coaching, you're serving them, you're having strengths-based discussions, how do you help them go, this is really amazing, and it's nowhere in the organizational culture, and I'm willing to persist and look to inform and shift that? There's some tension and a lot of pressure that can emerge there. How do you work with that?
There's a lot of pressure for that. And my experience is one person at a time. And it's slow, but it's effective because and if you're lucky, that one person is a big decision maker. And most of the time, it's those big decision makers who are keeping the culture where it's at. So you're rarely that lucky, right? Unless they're already strengths based in some way, or at least their mindset can be shifted to that way. They just hadn't heard about it. But I've been working with there's one company I've been working with for a long time, and it is literally one person at a time. And then it leads to a workshop of their group. And then it leads to another kind of maybe coaching engagement who's a leader and also then starts to be leader as coach. And then they want their team to understand their own strengths so that they can be better managers to them. And so you find all of the good intentioned people if you're given that runway, and you find, you know, I do find it hard to navigate, or when you talk so much in our program, like our mentor program, about the business that we own as well as the expertise that we have as a coach. And I still try to ignore the business that I own in many ways. Like I'm just like everybody else, which is, I don't know. I was in marketing for 20 plus years and I really don't want to market myself. It's ridiculous. But you do always talk about us as being like the owner of our own company. And I think, you know, Steve, my approach is coach-like opposed to business-like. I mean, I feel that I do find the right audiences and I look for them, and I can tailor my messaging to them in a different way. So like someone who's not a true believer, I have to speak differently and look at what their objectives are, obviously. And then I can kind of say how strengths fits into their objectives, um, and just how it fits actually into their culture. Because very few people admit that their culture is not strengths based. I mean, do they ever have that awareness? Would they ever say that? So what we kind of try to do is play into like, you are, and like, how do we get you to do more of that, you know? And so I it works sometimes.
So when you say one person at a time, which I completely follow, but who would be the first person? So who is the first person that you look at an organization that would be the right man, the right woman or man to really, like a domino, start getting in there?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And again, I think well, if you're lucky, it's someone you already know. But if it's not someone you already know, I think through networking and through understanding an organization, you really do, as with marketing, right? You really do have to find the audience that's going to be most um, akin to who you are already, right? So who's the one that's most receptive to your message? Either maybe they're like in the most crisis, so they'll try anything. I mean, that could be. So you find, or through word of mouth or whatever, you find that. Through networking, you just start to meet people who think the same things you do, and maybe they've been exposed to strengths, maybe they haven't. But you start speaking the language that they understand, and then you can kind of slowly integrate kind of the strengths, actual framework. I think that, luckily Gallup is very well known. Strengths Finder is really well known. Maybe not their new word, but their old word. So you can say it, but sometimes it just is like a negative because they're like, oh, it's just one of those assessments. Like, I've done so many of those assessments in my life. Like, I totally get it. And you're like, no. And,
It's a
so
really
we
great
have to know what
answer.
we're up against.
Absolutely. I think for our audience listening, I want to highlight something that you've said. It's a strengths-based approach. We start from what works. So if you're looking at organizational change, start from what's most likely to work.
Yeah.
Start from the people that are most receptive. Start from the leaders and the teams that are most receptive. I have this conversation with organizations that are looking to transform, and I will always point them, well, let's go to the people that are already doing it. Let's go to the teams that are most successful. Because if we can help take a most successful team and improve it, well, then we can start to A, create some experience, B, we can create fear of missing out, C, we can start to have them socialize like you spoke to before. People start sharing the language. Now we've actually got some allies. So it's not me against the organization anymore. It's me with this amazing team of people that everyone else starts to respect and acknowledge. Now we've got a team behind us to start to inspire others to differently.
Yeah. On a totally different track, which I don't have true expertise in, I feel like all that sometimes falls apart with incentives that these organizations have. And so I see it. Yeah, and the incentives just need to be somewhat aligned. They don't need to be exactly aligned, but sometimes they fly in the face of that, right? Really kind of rewarding those teams that are doing well and that are functionally working well together is not often the primary reward, right? It's getting over the finish line, and it's kind of doing it at all costs. Or scorching the earth behind you is okay as long as you meet the number. But what happens next quarter and the burnout and like the disengagement? And it just, the incentives feel so misaligned, understandably in a way, but also like short-sighted. I'm not an expert in what the right answer is, but I know the importance of it
You're right.
there.
The incentives are often manipulative tactics to force people to work harder. Whereas where you're pointing to and the energy of this conversation is, well, how do we create the conditions where people are bringing themselves,
Yes.
inspiring themselves, inspiring each other, and helping each other to deliver the mission that we've all come here to deliver?
Yeah.
Teams have
Yeah.
a purpose. We've got to get stuff done. Well, how do we help each other deliver on that in ways that, well, serve the ultimate purpose of why we've come together?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wish everybody thought that
I
way.
think I think that happens a lot between all industries, and if you certainly look at startups have a more that because they're not doesn't mean they're young, but they're like starting up and it going, and they understand that the team is so important. That's when you look at investors. Investors look when they invest in a startup, they look most of the times at the
Yeah.
team.
Yeah.
But if you're in older industries that exist 200 years, have been there, it is a big challenge to change that culture and that incentives, and people are like, oh, I'm just going to work my butt off to get that incentive because
Right.
I'm some
Right.
money.
Yeah, it's interesting, like places like McKinsey, of all people, right, of all places, which spent a really long time flattening organizations and thinning them out and all that stuff, really is doing a great job from a thought leadership perspective of talking about the value of what we're talking about really is productive teams and coaching type leadership, and really the whole bringing in the whole person, and saying that they have data to show that it does create more profitable organizations, right? So they are saying they're tying profitability and productivity and even like user experience and all different kinds of metrics to what we would consider more functional groups, more functional organizations. I think that's a great first step. It's really hard for an organization to believe that if they change things around, that they're not going to hit their number, right? Everybody has to hit their number or their whatever deadline has been set for them. And it's a risk that people maybe they'll take next year. Right. And in startups, I think it's so interesting. I mean, startups is like, I love it. It's like this microcosm of every bigger organization. It's just faster and leaner. And in a way, every strength matters. Every combination of talents matter. The appreciation that you have to have for your colleagues is that much more extreme because there's so much going on. You have to rely on them and really understand what they're good at versus what I'm good at. And so I love the startup environment. And early on, before I went to business school, I was in what would have been called a startup, but it was kind of just a small software company that was just getting started. But it was just like that, right? We all really appreciated what we brought to the table and learned a little enough about each other's jobs that there were bridges, and those bridges were just so important.
Mhm. So we've been talking about strengths a long of time, but maybe some people would say, leaders or other coaches say, what can I learn more about leadership? So can you recommend any books related to strengths and so on that they could maybe pick up and read? Well,
Yeah, it's interesting from a leadership perspective. It really is back to like the fundamentals of coaching, which is like, what is my voice? What do I believe in? And how do I bring that to being a leader, to being a manager? I am a big fan of, from a very practical, tactical perspective, Gallup has amazing resources in this area. I mean, they have like lists of questions you could ask if you're a manager for every situation. So you can kind of fake it till you make it in a lot of ways using just the Gallup, even if you haven't taken the strengths, it's just kind of some of these tools. Then there's other books, and McKinsey is one of the places that I go to a lot for their leadership kind of articles. And then there's like books like Range by, I don't know if you're familiar with Range by David Epstein. Oh, it's amazing. It's just like, it like talks to me because the whole premise is that the world is really complicated now. It used to be less complicated, and people who have a bunch of different experiences and kind of a wide variety of interests are better capable at dealing with today's complicated problems than people who've done only one thing. So back to the CV, if you've done only one thing and now you're in a similar role but faced with a new world, right? AI comes, I don't know, whatever happens. Well, they may not know what to do. That was like the industrial era, right? And so his book has so many different parts to it that really help get your head around, well, how can this range of experiences help me? And then really in understanding how to think differently about who you're hiring, how you're talking to people, what you're valuing at its core. So I think those are some of the things that I love. I think even Brene Brown's books are always like kind of rooted in that stuff too, and they're always so easy to pick up.
cool. So are there any tools? So we're here in the coaching tools company as well. Are there any tools that you from the coaching tools company are using that really could help to support your work in as a strength coach?
Well, I started using these tools right when I became a coach. And I think I started because I really needed something to help me be a coach. Like I had no idea what I was doing. And I think even as a beginner, it was amazing. Like I bought the mega pack, right? So that I could have everything at my disposal. Like I just felt like I needed, belts, suspenders, you name it, buttons, all those things. And so I've always like I've gone through a lot of them. And I find that for me, and I think really what I find most useful about them is that when there are areas that I want to get better at, the tools themselves actually help me get better. So I don't know that, I use the tools, they're awesome as homework and I send them, and people really get into them and come back with that. And for me, it helps me get more comfortable with the fundamentals of the topic of the conversation that we want to have. Visioning is a good example. Visioning is an area that like I'm constantly trying to learn more about. I just had someone do the newspaper article. So if they had to write a newspaper article about themselves in looking back on their like life or career, whatever, what would their one thing like they talk about? And when this I came back from a client. First of all, we'd already talked about some of these visions that she wanted, and this article had nothing to do with any of that. It was so from left field, but it was really passionately written, so well written, and really from the heart that became a real focus of her vision, right? Like, why does she have to wait until, you know, XYZ or until she's gone or whatever the case may be? But that would have never come out without that newspaper article tool. So I'm grateful for all the tools, and it's why I've become so engaged with like the mentor program as well, because it really speaks to me in a way. Again, 30 plus years in business and execution mode, and all these. I did product launches. I just was like it. I used a lot of tools, and having these as the foundation for things is it's so helpful. Like I'm so grateful to have them.
Good.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, tools are super important. Tools are designed to make our job easy, whether it's a visioning tool, whether it's a strength finder, heck, whether
Yeah.
it's a book that provides the foundation for a
That's
conversation.
right. That's right.
Tools are here in service of what we're co-creating with our
Yeah.
client.
Yeah.
And speaking of co-creating, we could obviously continue this conversation. We definitely look forward to further conversations with you on this and other topics. But for those that do want to reach out, learn more, or explore more, how can people connect with you?
Well, I have a website, IlyseGreenbergCoaching.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. I have other things, but I guess those would be kind of the two main places that I would find me. But yeah, I'd be happy to connect with any coaches who'd be interested in learning more about strengths if they're already doing something and want to add this to their toolbox. As you can tell, I'm a little bit passionate about it. So
Just a little bit.
thank you. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing this. It's actually been really fun having
Hmm.
this conversation. Can't believe it's over.
Thank you very much, Ilyse, for taking your time talking to us and for everybody listening in. And thank you very much. And until next time, bye.
It's a pleasure. Bye. Thank you.